So when I was a kid, I was in an organization called Young Progressives of America, which is a Communist Party organization, but it was Young Progressives, and it would talk about peace and jobs and justice and so forth. And its predecessor was the Labor Youth League, but that had been exposed by anti-communist committees. So they created a new name and a new organization. Communist Party was run by Moscow and was a fifth column in the United States. That is, all the people I knew when I was young wanted America to lose the Cold War. And they did it for what some people call idealistic reasons, but I don't see it that way. That tends to excuse what they did. They were blinded because they believed in a future in which socialism, communism, which there would be social justice. That's the term today for delusional people on the left. In which everybody would be, it would be like the Garden of Eden. That's what they see. And when they see that, then none of America's virtues seem like much. I mean, if you think there can be a world where everybody's equal and nobody fights and there's no racism and no prejudice, well, of course, America is going to fail that test. And so it's very easy to hate America. And people on the left, people who are called liberals these days, have inside a deep and abiding hatred for this country. Of course, they'll all say they're patriots, but what they mean is that they have this ideal utopia that they think America can become, and that's what they're patriotic to. Otherwise, they wouldn't have betrayed us in the Iraq War. They wouldn't be betraying us as they are today in the war against Islamic Hitlerites, which is the appropriate term for these people. You can't even use the word Islamic Nazi or Hitlerite, yet they, unlike Hitler, who hid the final solution, they shatter from the rooftops. They want to exterminate the Jews. That's very clear. They also want to kill all Christians and atheists, or make them submit, which is what Islam means, submit to their God. It's a barbaric, Islam is a barbaric religion. Now, of course, there are plenty of Muslims who are decent Muslims. They're not don't abide by all the tenets of the faith. They don't fully comprehend what it's about. But this is a religion whose prophet called for the extermination of the Jews, slay the infidels, and there has been no reformation in Islam. So it's this. But when confronted by this threat, so-called liberals, progressives, people who believe there's going to be this future in which everybody gets along, they see the enemy as people like me. Only in the days of the Soviet Union was the Communist Party really important as a party. What's important is the idea. Once you have the idea that there can be a kingdom of heaven on earth, and that kingdom of heaven can be created by human beings, corrupt human beings, through political power, then you're a communist, and everything goes with it. Misinformation is an honest kind of mistake. You got something wrong. Disinformation is something that fits into an ideological framework, a vision, and serves a political end. They're very different, very sinister. Well, disinformation is a calculated deception where you spread lies about your opponents. It's a form of psychological warfare. That's what it really is. The thing about disinformation is that while there are some calculators, there are plenty of people, in fact, most people on the left, provide or put out disinformation about themselves as a matter of course. If you say that you want America to lose the Cold War, or you think that the attacks of 9/11 were justified, or that you want a revolution in America, you know, you'll isolate yourself. So leftists never say what their agendas are. They tell you that they're for peace. We have these anti-war movements, which are nothing of the sort. The last big anti-war movement was about the war in Iraq. It wasn't an anti-war movement. It wasn't a peace movement. There was never a demonstration in front of the Iraqi embassy calling on Saddam Hussein to obey the 16 and then 17 UN resolutions to honor the truce he had signed in the Gulf War, which is what the conflict with Iraq was about. Not a single demonstration. All the demonstrations were attacks on America. The anti-war movement is the hate America left. That's what it is. And a lot of well-meaning people who are duped into thinking that this is really a peace demonstration. I once had he was actually a Trotskyist, but a socialist mentor when I was on the left, Isaac Deutscher, a very famous writer, who said to me, he said, David, the problem is that people have a very hard time adding 2 and 2 and getting 4. So what stands out, if you don't have these ideological blinders on, as obvious, which is you don't have a peace movement if you're only attacking not only one side, but actually the side that has defended the peace. And you leave the culprit, a mass criminal. I mean, Saddam Hussein was a monster. And you're out there trying to prevent or to you know, save his bacon, basically, keep him in power. If you don't see what you're doing, it's because you have these ideological blinders on. So disinformation, in the days of the Soviet Empire, you know, they had a whole apparatus to put out. It was disinformation, but they probably didn't even think of it as lies. They thought of it as their cause is very noble, since they're redeeming the world and making it a perfect place. So anything's justified. And actually, I've written about this. Saul Alinsky, who is the Karl Marx of the Obama left. This whole book is about lying. It's about the ends justify the means. Our ends are so noble because we're going to save the world that we, you know, any means is justified. In war, any means is justified. And he says it in so many words. So in their own minds, even though they know they're not telling the truth, it's in a higher service of a higher cause, a higher morality. You know, you think of all those, you know, a recent example would be all those environmental scientists in England who are, I forget the name of the scientific station, but it's the heart of the global warming. All the statistics come out of there. They were cooking the books because they had such a belief in their cause that the facts didn't matter. By now, the left has so manufactured its history and so believes in itself that it has a whole world of fiction in which it lives and confronts everybody else. So disinformation, in a way, is their information. The most famous piece of disinformation is the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was put out by the Tsarist police and then picked up by Hitler, and actually Henry Ford in this country. which purported to show that there's a cabal of Jews controlling the world. People like conspiracy theories. It's kind of a substitute for God. That is, it puts order into the world. There's not random chaos and catastrophe. Everything is ordered because there's a conspiracy behind it. So people are prone, they feel comfortable with conspiracy theories. But the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was then, used to justify killing the Jews. The Nazis put it out, and now it's a bestseller in the Middle East. The Egyptian TV ran, I believe, a television series, #1 bestseller. Because the fact is that the Muslim Middle East is a cauldron of Jew hatred. These are Nazis. And it's not just Nazi leaders. If you look at the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, their heroes are Nazis. Their heroes are people who kill people because they're Jews, not because of anything they did, just because they're Jews. Their children are taught to hate Jews and want to kill them. When I say children, I'm talking 5-year. Actually, there are videos of 3-year-olds. The Palestinians are Nazis as a people. It's the first really Nazi people. The Germans supported Hitler, but as I say, Hitler hid the final solution from them. But the final solution is on the lips of every leader of Hamas and the PLO. You look at CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is one of the chief front groups of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's modeled on American front groups. The communists had the Emergency Civil Liberties Committee. Actually, the ACLU started this way, but so creating a civil rights groups, peace groups, immigrant groups. They could learn all of that from American leftists. That's what they do. Now, as I say, I mean, the leaders of the so-called anti-war movement were communists. There were 2 organizations that led the mass 100,000 million demonstrations during the Iraq War. One was run by the Workers' World Party, which is a communist party that aligns with North Korea. That's how bad they are. And the other group, which was formed by all the moderates and supported by the New York Times, was led by Leslie Kagan, who's a lifelong communist. But they didn't say we want communism, which is what they wanted. The leaders, the people who organized it, they said we want peace. But they didn't want peace, they wanted America to lose. And there's a big difference. No, I mean, it's really easy to create a front group. You just have a different name. Instead of the Muslim Brotherhood, we call it the Muslim Students Association. But it's a top-down organization. It's not like a democracy. There's not chaos there. It's not anarchy. The New Left had some real anarchistic organizations. But that's not how these front groups work. The Muslim Students Association is thoroughly controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. Huma Abedin was on the board of one of them. And they recruit. What they do is, okay, so the Muslim Students Association is set up so that it appears to be non-political, although it sponsors Jew hate weeks called Israeli Apartheid Weeks on American campuses, and it sponsors Jew hating and America hating speakers. But on the campus, it's like a religious, cultural organization. What goes on is that the leaders who are appointed, rather than there's not like open elections or something like that, they see who the political students are, or who's susceptible, and they recruit them to their leadership positions. So it's not an accident that at least 12 former presidents of Muslim Students Association, including Anwar al-Awlaki, who was the president of the MSA at Colorado State, went on to careers in Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups, high-level careers. The people who run these are like, think of these anti-war groups. The smart leaders, like Leslie Kagan would be a smart one, would not allow on their platforms people who would mess with the front group message. The aim there was to cripple the United States. Not the long-term goal is to create a communist United States. But they wouldn't allow into their literature or on their platforms people calling for a communist United States because they want as broad, they want to suck in as broad a group as possible. These great or terrible messianic movements, Nazism, communism, socialism, all appear after Darwin. They appear when organized religion declines. People need a meaning in their lives, and these are substitutes for religion. And what makes them so dangerous, much more dangerous than any traditional religion, and I don't consider Islam a traditional religion. It's not at all parallel to Judaism or Christianity. These are dangerous in a way that other religions aren't anymore, because they believe they can establish the kingdom of heaven in this world. And they will do anything that it takes to achieve that. And of course, if you believed that you could, lead mankind into the Garden of Eden, what crime wouldn't you commit and what lie wouldn't you tell to do it? And that's the morality of the left, of progressives, of liberals. I wanted to, I've been able to get my staff to do this, but I wanted to create a series called Inside Every Liberal is a Totalitarian Screaming to Get Out. And you can see this with Mayor Bloomberg, who's supposed to be a moderate Republican. But his mentality would lead to controlling every aspect of your life, for your own good, of course, which is, that's what the communists said, and the Nazis too. I mean, they were going to purify the race. They get rid of the Jews and the gypsies and all the mongoloids, and the world would be a better place. I mean, that's that simple. So resisting this, being a conservative, is holding on to reality, which is depressing. It's the Gospels, the poor you shall have with you always. Of course, that's true. Unless you want to, of course, people on the left think that poor people have no responsibility for being poor. But the fact of the matter is, they do. And in order to cure people, whether it's of their drug abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever, sugar abuse, you have to control them. And that's what totalitarianism is about. The word totalitarian is total control. It's not like a normal dictatorship where you have a corrupt tyrant who basically just doesn't want people to interfere with his corruption and his pleasure. And a totalitarian regime, which is created by progressives, which wants to change your very nature. As I say, the disinformation programs of the Cold War there was obviously an apparatus inside the Soviet bloc that manufactured this information, and that I have no doubt that's it's certainly true of the Palestinians and the Islamists. I mean, they're congenital liars, is what they are. I mean, I'm dumbstruck by the brazenness, of the kind of propaganda they put out that Jews never inhabited the Middle East, and I don't know. The Temple of Solomon wasn't the Temple of Solomon, and just on and on. Just rewrite history. It may be my age, or I've been watching this for too long, or what. But we moved into a whole different era of lying, and people collude in it. People who are good people, they collude in the lies, like the Middle East. The war in the Middle East, it's not about land. The whole Palestinian case is a monster lie. There isn't an inch of Israel on Arab land. It was all controlled, owned, lock, stock, and barrel by the Turks, who aren't Arabs, for 400 years. And they lost the First World War. And 5 countries were created out of the ruins of the Turkish Empire, which is Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Israel. And nobody's accusing the Syrians or the Lebanese or the Jordanians of stealing the land, only the Jews. So, but the New York Times goes along with these lies, the whole liberal media. And the Israelis have done their part there by talking about a peace process. How can you have a peace process with people who want to exterminate you? You can't. The Islamists have been to school, and particularly the Palestinians, with the KGB and the communists during the Cold War. And then with the left, I wrote a book called Unholy Alliance about it's a tacit alliance between the left and the Islamists. And it's forged by the way they both perceive America as the great Satan and Israel as the little Satan. And so what the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood in particular, didn't learn from the KGB, they've learned from the American and European left, who have eased their way into power. The Middle East, it's a holy war. It used to be an Arab war because the Arabs are xenophobic racists against the Jews. It's going to have a non-Arab people. Well, the Persians aren't Arabs, but not a new non-Arab people. And then it became a Muslim war. And now it's a Muslim holy war. The Jews have to be driven into the sea because they're not Muslims. And the Christians too. Christian communities in the Middle East are dying, or they're being killed, is more accurate. Communism didn't die with the Cold War. It's alive and well. In fact, it's in the White House. Obama was brought up and spent his life in the same left that I left, only the worst part of it, the Bill Ayers part. The Democratic Party is addicted to lying because until now, and I still think that we are not inhabiting a leftist country. The Democrats always understood that their true beliefs were far to the left of the American people. So they always pretend to be Republicans when they run for office. And this predates Obama. This is how Bill Clinton did it. The era of big government is over. Ha! That was just said to win an election. You can't believe a word they say. And it's all because they're all missionaries. And they're their goal is the or as Obama put it, the fundamental transformation of America. We have a terrible situation in this country where the chief advisor on Muslim affairs to Hillary Clinton and to the American Secretary of State was a Muslim Brotherhood operative, Huma Abedin. I think communism is stronger than ever. Of course, today's communists will denounce communists. Not ones active today. You know, they'll love Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro and so forth. But Stalin, but you know, Nikita Khrushchev attacked Stalin. Communists are not stupid, and they adjust. But communism that is alive and well and very, very strong because it represents that longing that people have, that life should be meaningful, that the world should be just and ordered. The elite media is the left. They're the left. It's the same people. So, yeah, we had a sort of a golden era in the 50s where we had a reasonably objective, I say reasonably objective media because it's, well, you know, it's human beings. Human beings are can't be objective. Now we have partisan media, and it's partisan left and partisan anti-American. And hopefully, there's always, you know, I need to make this caveat. I hope it doesn't get lost on the cutting floor. But in every movement, there are people who go along for various reasons and then wake up. Not everybody has malice in their hearts. So you always have to be mindful of that. You know, wait for people to be disillusioned and to wake up. And there are certainly some honest people in the media still. Fox actually has one, Kirsten Powers, I think. We did an article about her called The Last Liberal, but she's an honest person. I might disagree with her on, you know, quite a bit. But I can see that, you know, I feel that if, you know, we got in a room long enough, we wouldn't disagree after a bit. That's not true of Rachel Maddow. She's an, you know, ideologue. And it's not true of a lot of them. And then some of them are just beyond help, like Alan Combs, who's a very nice man, but totally deluded. Republicans are not missionaries, and that's one of the reasons they lose elections. They're pragmatists, and they're wonks, and they appeal to reason, and they make arguments, and nobody's listening to them because meanwhile, the Democrats are accusing them of being predators and murderers and defenders of the very wealthy. So it's an uneven battle. But the Democratic Party has built into it disinformation because they're leftists and progressives. And they know their heartfelt ideas are not popular. Well, I don't think you can ever stop disinformation. I mean, look, it's part of the human condition. People lie. You know, it started with the snake in the garden, didn't it? He said, "You shall be as God." That's the delusion that leftists had, that they can be as God. But that was a lie. People lie. They do it all the time. And the question is the magnitude of it. And I've tried to explain why it's endemic to progressives and leftists and liberals. They have to lie. And they just, because, and they can justify the lies to themselves. People who don't have this delusion that they're saving everybody can be honest with themselves and say, you know, I told a fib, or that wasn't accurate. That kind of lying is going to be with us always. And the systematic lying, which disinformation is a good word for, that flows from the idealism. It was Nietzsche who said that idealism kills. Disinformation flows from the delusion that you can change the world. If you don't think you can change the world, then lying becomes, it's just an instrumental thing. You're doing a deal, so you're going to conceal this weakness in your side of the bargain or whatever. It has a limited purpose. If you think you can change the world and make everybody better and happy, then it's endless, it's limitless. And that's where your disinformation, you not only do you lie for a particular goal, but you lie to protect the big goal. So, for example, just how this is built into our culture, because the left dominates our culture. There's the periods of the Red Scare. There's one in the early 20s. It's called the Red Scare. Everybody refers to it. You look in Wikipedia, you look in your dictionary, Red Scare is going to turn up the 20s. Well, there was something like 100 bombings by the anarchists, by the Reds in the 20s. They tried to kill the Attorney General of the United States. They blew up J.P. Morgan's mailbox and killed his chauffeur. They poisoned a dinner of 200 Catholics. They tried to poison the diocese in Chicago, and the poison wasn't strong enough, so they only made people sick. That's what why isn't it called the Red Menace or the Red Threat? Same thing with the McCarthy era. McCarthy's the bad guy. What about all these traitors? Traitors way high up in government. As I say, my parents and everybody I knew wanted the Soviet Union to win the Cold War, and lots of them did things. My parents actually hid an East German communist in our basement. I mean, they were very law-abiding citizens, but they were traitors. I mean, that's where their hearts were. So even our language, it's just unbelievable. Abu Ghraib is some kind of gigantic scandal. Incinerating 80 people in Waco, mainly women and children, lots of them black, all of them poor. Nobody even remembers that. So, as I say, we live in this universe that the left creates because it runs the media. I don't think that patriotic Americans should be discouraged. I mean, everything I've said probably would lead to discouragement, but conservatives have only begun to fight. When I came out of the left, I said, where's the army on the right? And there was none. There's no grassroots movement whatsoever. Now there's the Tea Parties. We have a grassroots movement. I'd say, where's the so-called ruling class? Where are all these rich people who are supposed to, why aren't they defending their system? Well, now there actually is an organization of wealthy people, the Americans for Prosperity, that's got into the battle. There used to be, 3 networks. So all the news, the god of truth was Walter Cronkite, a leftist. Now there's all this media, there's the internet and so forth. So I think we have some good chances to actually win this battle. But people got to wake up sooner rather than later.